Have you ever heard of a ghost so powerful it was recognized by a state? A haunting so terrifying it drew the attention of a future U.S. president? This isn't just another spooky campfire tale. This is the story of the Bell Witch, America's greatest ghost story, officially documented in the history of Tennessee. Our story begins in 1817 in a quiet, rural community called Red River, which is now Adams, Tennessee. John Bell, a prosperous farmer, lived here with his wife Lucy and their children. They were a respected, church-going family, living a peaceful life on their 320-acre farm. But that peace was about to be shattered in the most unimaginable way. It all started subtly. One evening, John Bell was inspecting his cornfield when he saw a strange animal lurking among the rows. He described it as having the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. He took a shot at it, but the creature simply vanished. That same night, the strange occurrences moved inside the Bell family home. The family began hearing faint, unsettling noises. It started with a gentle knocking sound on the outside doors and walls. Then, it escalated. The sounds became louder, more aggressive, like someone was beating on a house with a heavy stick. Inside, they would hear sounds of lips smacking, a dog fight, or chains being dragged across the wooden floors. At first, they tried to dismiss it, thinking it was just the wind or pranksters, but the activity only grew worse. Soon, the invisible entity began to physically torment the family. It would pull the covers off their beds in the middle of the night, leaving them shivering in the cold. It would yank their hair and pinch and slap them, leaving welts and bruises on their skin. The youngest daughter, Bessie Bell, seemed to be the primary target of this torment. Her ordeal was particularly harrowing. She would be slapped, her hair pulled, and she'd be stuck with pins by this unseen force. Her face would often become swollen and red from the relentless attacks. The family was terrified and exhausted. They tried to keep it a secret, fearing ridicule from their neighbors. But after a year of enduring this escalating terror, John Bell couldn't bear it anymore. He confided in his closest friend and neighbor, James Johnston. Johnston, skeptical at first, agreed to spend a night at the Bell home to witness it for himself. That night, James and his wife experienced the full force of the haunting. The blankets were ripped from their bed, and they were subjected to the same slapping and pinching that the Bells had described. Shaken and convinced, Johnston believed the family was being tormented by something supernatural. He advised John Bell that this was too much for one family to handle alone. It was time to bring in more people. Soon, the news of the Bell family's plight spread throughout the community and beyond. People from all over traveled to the Bell farm, hoping to experience the strange phenomena for themselves. A committee was even formed to investigate, and this is when the entity, which the family had started calling the witch, began to speak. At first, it was just faint whispers, barely audible, like an old woman humming hymns. But over time, its voice grew stronger and clearer. It could recite Bible verses, carry on intelligent conversations, and even sing. The voice knew things, intimate secrets about people in the community, things no one else could possibly know. It seemed to be everywhere at once, able to answer questions simultaneously from different rooms in the house. The entity identified itself as Kate, claiming to be the witch of a neighbor, Kate Batts, with whom John Bell had a land dispute. However, it also gave other conflicting identities, leaving everyone confused about its true origin. Kate, as the spirit was now known, had a distinct personality. She was cunning, vengeful, and had a wicked sense of humor, while she showed a strange fondness for Lucy Bell, whom she called the most perfect woman on earth. Her hatred for John Bell and Betsy was intense and unrelenting. She tormented John relentlessly, cursing him and promising his demise. She would follow him everywhere, her disembodied voice mocking and threatening him. His health began to fail rapidly. He suffered from facial seizures and had difficulty swallowing. The legend of the Bell Witch grew so large that it attracted the attention of General Andrew Jackson, a war hero and future president of the United States. Intrigued by the stories, Jackson and his men decided to visit the Bell farm to investigate. They arrived with a wagon and a so-called witch tamer, a man who claimed he could handle any spirit. As they approached the property, the wagon suddenly stopped dead. The horses couldn't move it, no matter how hard they were whipped. It was as if it were stuck to the ground. Jackson, a man not easily spooked, reportedly exclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, it is the witch." Suddenly, a sharp, metallic voice rang out from the woods, telling them they could proceed after she taught the witch tamer a lesson. The wheels began to turn again, and they continued to the Bell home. That night, Jackson and his men settled in, ready for whatever the witch had in store. The witch tamer boasted about his abilities, Pulling out a pistol with a silver bullet and a special charm he claimed would silence the spirit. As he spoke, he suddenly screamed in agony. He began jerking and contorting, yelling that he was being stuck with pins and beaten by an invisible force. He was then unceremoniously thrown out of the house by the unseen entity. Kate's voice then announced she would see one of Jackson's men, but would leave the rest alone for the night because she respected the general. True to her word, one man was tormented all night while the others were left in peace. The next morning, a thoroughly humbled Andrew Jackson and his men left the farm, with Jackson later quoted as saying, "I had rather fight the British at New Orleans than to have to fight the Bell Witch." The torment continued for years. Kate seemed particularly determined to prevent a marriage between Betsy Bell and a young man she was engaged to named Joshua Gardner. Kate would harass the young couple mercilessly whenever they were together. The constant spiritual interference and public spectacle became too much for Betsy. Heartbroken, she broke off the engagement in 1821. After successfully breaking them up, the witch's activity around Betsy began to subside. But for John Bell, the end was drawing near. His health had completely deteriorated under Kate's constant attacks. In December of 1820, he fell into a stupor and couldn't be roused. The family found a strange vial of dark liquid in the medicine cabinet. When they questioned the witch about it, she gleefully admitted she had given John a dose of it and that it would be the end of him. To test the liquid, they gave a drop to the family cat, which died almost instantly. John Bell passed away shortly after. Kate's presence was even felt at his funeral, where she was heard singing a boisterous drinking song as his grave was being filled. John Bell's death is a unique and chilling part of American history, the only case officially recognized by a state where a person's death was attributed to a supernatural entity. After John Bell's death, the witch's activities lessened, but she didn't leave entirely. She told the family she would be leaving but would return in 7 years. True to her word, she returned in 1828, focusing her attention on John Bell Jr. For 2 weeks, she engaged in philosophical and religious discussions with him, predicting future events like the Civil War. Then, she departed again, promising to return one more time, 107 years later, in 1935. Whether she ever made that final return is unknown. The Bell family descendants have reported strange occurrences over the years, and visitors to the area, particularly the Bell Witch Cave on the old property, still report unsettling experiences hearing whispers, feeling cold spots, and even being touched by unseen hands. The Bell Witch haunting remains one of the most well-documented paranormal cases in history. It's a story that has been passed down through generations, a chilling reminder of an unseen world that once terrorized a family and a community. It raises questions that we still can't answer. Was it a vengeful spirit, a poltergeist, or something else entirely? Whatever it was, the entity known as Kate, the Bell Witch, has secured her place in the darkest corners of American folklore. The terror she inflicted on the Bell family was just the beginning of her story, a story that continues to haunt us to this day. The strange occurrences in the Bell household didn't stop with just sounds. Soon, the entity, which they began to call the witch, started physically interacting with the family. The children, especially young Betsy, were the primary targets. Their blankets would be violently ripped from their beds in the middle of the night, leaving them shivering and terrified. Invisible hands would pull their hair, and they'd feel sharp slaps on their faces, sometimes leaving red marks and welts that would be visible in the morning. John Bell himself wasn't spared. He began to experience a peculiar affliction. His tongue would often feel thick and swollen, making it nearly impossible for him to speak or even swallow. It felt as if an invisible force was clamping down on his jaw, a sensation he described as excruciating. The family tried everything they could think of. They prayed, they read from the Bible, but the attacks only grew more intense and more malicious. The entity seemed to feed on their fear, its power growing with each scream and each sleepless night. Word of the haunting spread like wildfire throughout the Red River settlement. Neighbors and friends, initially skeptical, came to the Bell farm to witness the phenomena for themselves. One of the first was James Johnson, a close friend of the Bell family. He decided to spend a night to see if the stories were true. As he lay in bed, the same unseen force that had tormented the Bells began to attack him, tearing the covers from his body with incredible strength. Convinced and terrified, Johnson suggested that John Bell form an investigative committee to document the events and hopefully find a solution. This committee included men from all walks of life, from simple farmers to educated professionals. They came, they saw, and they were all left utterly bewildered. The entity was not shy. It would knock, it would scratch, and it would even begin to speak. At first, its voice was weak, a faint, raspy whisper that mimicked the sound of an old woman struggling to breathe. It would quote scripture, sing hymns out of tune, and engage in arguments with anyone brave enough to address it. As the weeks turned into months, the voice grew stronger and clearer. It claimed to be Kate, a witch who had been wronged by John Bell in a land deal. Kate's voice became a constant presence in the house, a disembodied narrator to the family's misery. She knew everyone's secrets, things that no one outside the family could possibly know. She would recount private conversations verbatim, mocking them for their secrets and exposing their hidden thoughts. Her knowledge was uncanny and deeply unsettling. She seemed to be everywhere at once, an omniscient tormentor. Kate's main targets remained John Bell, whom she called Old Jack, and his daughter, Betsy. She vowed to torment John to his grave and to prevent Betsy from marrying her beloved, Joshua Gardner. Whenever Joshua would visit, Kate's attacks on Betsy would escalate dramatically. She would be pinched, pricked with invisible pins, and thrown around the room by an unseen force. The once happy and vibrant young woman became a shadow of her former self, constantly living in fear of the next assault. The fame of the Bell Witch grew far beyond the small Tennessee community. Stories of the talking, tormenting spirit reached Nashville, and from there, spread across the country. One of the most famous visitors to the Bell farm was none other than General Andrew Jackson, a future president of the United States. Intrigued and skeptical, Jackson arrived with a retinue of men, including a self-proclaimed witch tamer. As they approached the property, their wagon suddenly stopped dead in its tracks. The horses strained, but the wheels wouldn't turn, as if held by an invisible, immovable force. Jackson, a man not known for his patience, is said to have exclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, it must be the witch." Suddenly, a sharp, metallic voice echoed from the roadside, announcing that they could proceed and that she would see them later that night. Just as mysteriously as it had stopped, the wagon was released, and they continued to the Bell home. That night, Jackson and his men settled in, ready for whatever was to come. The witch tamer, confident in his abilities, pulled out a pistol loaded with a silver bullet, boasting that he could handle any spirit. He began to taunt Kate, calling her out and daring her to show herself. The response was swift and brutal. The man suddenly screamed, crying out that he was being stuck with pins and beaten by an invisible entity. He was then violently thrown from his chair and dragged towards the fireplace, pleading for help. Jackson's men, terrified, had to physically pull him away. The witch tamer, thoroughly defeated and humbled, begged Jackson to leave the farm at once. They departed the very next morning, with Jackson later quoted as saying he'd rather fight the entire British army than face the Bell Witch again. For John Bell, the torment was relentless. Kate's curse on him seemed to be taking a physical toll. His health rapidly declined. He suffered from seizures, muscle spasms, and the persistent swelling of his throat that made it difficult to eat or speak. He was often confined to his bed, weak and frail, while Kate's disembodied voice would cackle and sing gleefully about his impending demise. She made no secret of her hatred for him, promising that she would not rest until he was gone. The family watched in horror, helpless as their patriarch wasted away. In December of 1820, John Bell fell into a stupor and couldn't be roused. The family found a strange vial of dark liquid in the medicine cabinet. When they gave a drop to the cat, it died almost instantly. Kate's triumphant voice filled the room, boasting that she had given old Jack a dose of it while he slept, finally fulfilling her vow. John Bell passed away on December 20th, 1820. During his funeral, as mourners sang a final hymn, Kate's voice joined in, singing loudly and joyously until the last shovel of dirt was placed on his grave. With John Bell gone, the intensity of the haunting seemed to lessen, but Kate was not finished. Her final task was to break off Betsy's engagement to Joshua Gardner. The constant, brutal attacks on Betsy had taken their toll. Exhausted and heartbroken, Betsy finally gave in to the witch's demands and told Joshua she could not marry him. With her mission accomplished, Kate announced she would be leaving, but promised to return in 7 years. The house fell silent for the first time in years. True to her word, the entity returned in 1828. She visited John Bell Jr. and his family, having long conversations with him about the past, present, and future, even predicting the Civil War with eerie accuracy. After a few weeks, she departed again, vowed to return one last time in 107 years, which would have been in 1935. Whether she ever made that final visit remains unknown. The original Bell cabin is long gone, but a cave on the property, believed to have been a focal point of Kate's energy, can still be visited today. The story of the Bell, which remains America's most documented haunting, a chilling testament to a family tormented by an unseen, malevolent force. A story that blurs the line between folklore and a terrifying, historical reality. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to every single one of you who has subscribed to the channel. Your support means the world to me and allows me to keep telling these incredible stories. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown. This is Ghosttery, signing off. Until next time, stay curious.